Welcome, one and all, to another empowering episode of Pep Talks with Megan De La Concha. I hope that you guys woke up this morning or whenever you're listening. I hope you're just in a really great mood. And if you're not, I hope that this Pep Talks puts a little pep in your step. I am excited to be back on here. We're going to continue the conversation from last week about toxic people. Last week, we started with just kind of a personal story of mine and how I was a really toxic person when I was in the most miserable part of my life. And I had no clue who I was. So therefore, I stood for nothing. I had no boundaries. So I let anything and everything come in. And I had really superficial friendships, and I acted in such toxic ways because of the insecurities that I had, and just being really broken, being a really broken person. But I am here today, and I'm actually able to speak on these things, which is really amazing. Hooray to growth. But first, I want to remind you that my one-to-one private coaching Foundations with Megan De La Concha is now open for enrollment. It is where we build authentic confidence, unshakable resilience, and transformation while deepening our faith. It's a 4-month program where you have 16 one-on-one sessions with me. You have full-time messaging support, a lot of amazing bonuses that have taken me a really long time to work on. So I'm really proud and I'm really happy to present them to you. We break down toxic habits, cycles, and patterns that we find in all areas of our life. And a lot of times we don't recognize that, right? For instance, me being a toxic person, I didn't realize I was a toxic person till years down the line when I realized who was toxic in my life. And I was like, well, that's oddly familiar because that's exactly how I used to act. So very eye-opening. It's encouraging, but it's also disappointing because, of course, we don't ever want to be that person, but we are. And a lot of times what we think are little tiny things that we do and that aren't hurtful or that we settle for, we just think that, man, that's just life, but it's actually very toxic, which leads to other toxic behaviors. So we find a way to break those down in your life, and then we deep dive and we build all of that back up so that you are like a phoenix rising from the ashes, and you are the woman that you were always meant to be, and you are living the life that you were always meant to live. So I'm super excited about that. If you are interested in working with me, book a discovery call by heading to megandelaconcha.com. It is under my services page. You can schedule everything on there. It's for 30 minutes. I would love to get to know you. It is just a complimentary chat, and just kind of see where you're at, what your journey is, and see how I can best support you. Super, super excited about that. So many things that are happening. I do have a group program that's launching in January 2021. So if you're not on my email list, again, head to the website, join my email list so that you are the first to know when my group coaching session opens up. It will be a 6-week personal empowerment program with workbooks, with lives, coaching with me, and a private community so you can find the most amazing support through sisterhood. So I'm really excited about that. That was very vague. More information will be coming out soon, but I don't want to take up your time with all of that. I want to get right into today's episode. And this is, like I said, this is an extension of last week's conversation on Are You Toxic? And it just touched on a personal story of mine, and also just kind of little red flags that you recognize either within yourself or other people, that are kind of like hard truths to face. So I kind of want to continue that conversation of how to recognize toxic people in your life. And one of the ways that we transform is through our self-discovery and through our self-awareness. And in my coaching program, I do teach very heavily on how you tune into your feelings, because let's face it, people, the only thing that we can control is ourselves. So the more we work on ourselves, the more confidence we have, the more resilience we have, the more of a transformation that we make, we rise to a higher level of who we are and who God has called us to be. And when we do that, we could become very in tune with ourselves, where we learn to trust our gut, where we learn to trust our intuition, where we know without a doubt what's right, what's wrong. We have morals that we stick to. We have values that we stick to, and we don't feel bad about it. We don't budge for not nobody, okay? So that is one of the amazing things of when you build confidence and resilience, and you're empowered. Your life just becomes empowered with amazing, beautiful things about yourself and amazing, beautiful things of other people, your business, your friendships, your relationships, your career, money, God, everything just levels up with you. So when you're at a place of where you're insecure and you're doubtful and you just don't even really know who you are, it's very hard to understand your feelings. And most of the time, your feelings control you. You live in a reactionary state. You make decisions based out of fear. You make decisions based out of people pleasing. You make decisions based out of anxiety. Okay. That was me for a very, very, very long time. And the best decisions were not made. Okay. Very absent of good decisions. I didn't know how to trust my feelings because I was constantly being told that what I was feeling wasn't real. I was dumb for what I felt. What I felt, I shouldn't be feeling this way, so on and so forth. So I didn't have the confidence to trust my own self. So I never knew how to tune into my feelings. So I never was aware of when I was having an uncomfortable or a bad feeling about something. So that allowed a lot of people to come into my life, or a lot of situations, or a lot of opportunities, if you want to call them that, circumstances to come into my life, and I allowed them to. I settled for them. I didn't set boundaries because I had no idea what I was feeling. And if I was feeling something, I immediately doubted it. I immediately disregarded it. And I just kind of like brush it off as, that's not really how you feel. And you're being overly sensitive, or you're being overly this, that. I dismissed myself a lot. So as we grow and as we learn things about our own self, because that's the only thing that we can control, um, is how to recognize when there are toxic people, toxic situations, or toxic circumstances in your life. And one of those things is learning how to tune into your feelings. Um, there are two key feelings in others that are red flags, or cues. I'm sorry, two key feelings in ourselves that come from others that are either red flags or cues that we are not, we don't have boundaries, or that they're a very toxic person. Whether they are in our lives or whether we just come into contact with them, like let's say a coworker at work, or somebody maybe you're hosting, and maybe it's a new friend or a new mom at school, or just someone that you've come in contact with, and you get these little red flags and then you get these little cues. And the two key feelings, that signal that should be going off in your brain, are if you're uncomfortable, and resentment is another one. So, for instance, you will feel these things during an interaction with them. I'm going to take myself for an example. There are certain people that are still in my life, for various reasons that are out of my control. And I realized I kept trying to downplay the toxicity of one particular person. And I kept trying to make excuses. And I kept trying to say that it was me. I was holding on to anger. I was holding on to frustration. I was holding on to this person. And um, it was a person at work. And so I was putting the blame on myself. I wasn't trusting my gut instinct. I was just saying that it was me. I needed to get over something. I needed to be more compassionate. I needed to be more kind. The one thing that I will tell you that was a pattern is This person would make me feel so comfortable when we were in a setting together. Like I would dread going into a setting or going into an area with her where I knew it would just be us or I knew she'd be involved. But then once I got there, and everyone got talking, and this person was just her funny self that made you just feel warm and comforted, and welcoming. And you felt you had a connection with them. Well, what would happen is I would let go of my boundaries and I would end up just like pouring my heart out to her because I was comfortable, or I would tell her things, personal things about myself. I would really open up, and then always, without a doubt, the next day or even later in the day, I would be overcome with like almost like this anxiety. And it was discomfort and resentment because I was like, oh my God, why the freak would I tell her that? Like I set these mental boundaries. I try to set these physical boundaries. And it's like as soon as I'm in her presence, she just like lures me back in and makes me feel comfortable and warm. And I just open back up to her. And I know that there's no good intentions about her whatsoever. She's literally gaining information so that she can go spread it to whoever she wants to spread it to. I knew that because it was done to me so many times. So I got to become aware, or I was able to become aware of, I always feel this way after my interaction with her. And that was God telling me, it's not you, Megan, it's her. I'm trying to show you who this person is. So if you walk away from any type of interaction of somebody who's in your life, and it can be a family member, if you walk away from an interaction with them, or if you're in a relationship and you constantly feel like I'm uncomfortable, or oh, why do I feel this way? Like you just feel like that resentment, you just feel icky and gross. It's because you feel like you're being taken advantage of in that relationship, or you're being taken advantage of, like my personal information, my wins, my excitement, things that were going on in my family life, that all that information was being taken advantage of, right? It was being taken from me to be used against me. And also, the resentment and the discomfort comes from not being appreciated. So that can come from a family member or someone you're in an intimate relationship. And the reason we feel that way is because it's a sign that we're pushing ourselves beyond our own limits because we feel guilty. For instance, if it's a family member, if it's your mom or your dad, if it's a parent, we are taught, especially in faith, that we are to honor our mother and our father, and we are not to speak against them, right? So when we are grown up by that, and we might not have the best parents, because parents can F up too, okay? They can screw up and they can be screwed up. Um, but us as children, we feel a responsibility. So we feel guilty, and we want to be a good daughter and we want to be a good son, or if it's your spouse, you want to be a good wife, you want to be a good husband. Um, and so we feel guilty if we are feeling discomfort, or if we feel resentment towards them, or if we feel that we're not respecting our boundaries towards them. So when we're pushing ourselves past our boundaries, whether we set them or not, you have an internal boundary that's already there. So when that feeling of discomfort comes, you start to feel guilty. Longtime friend, family member, spouse, etc. Okay, so that's a red flag that that person is triggering something in you. Okay, that's your intuition telling you something is going on here, and this is not the best relationship for me to have. This isn't even a good relationship. This isn't a good friendship. And this person is signaling to me that they're not the best person for me in my life. So before we go any further, we just have to recognize that. We just have to stop and recognize that. And a lot of times, like in our conversation before, it's hard to recognize. It's hard to accept that, especially if it's a family member, especially if it's an intimate relationship, especially if it's a really long time friend who has been through it all with you, right? It is really, 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 really hard to accept that. And back when I was in my abusive relationship, before I admitted what it was, I knew mentally long before what it was. But I never, ever, ever wanted to accept it or let alone voice it. Because when you accept something, you're stamping it as facts, right? You're stamping it as this is the truth, stamped, denied, approved. This is what it is. So now it is out there and it is like set in stone and you've said it, you've accepted it, so it is. And then that forces you to have to make a decision. Like, what do we say? Like, ignorance is bliss, right? Because if we don't want to accept it, we don't want to see things for what they are, even though we feel deep in our soul, deep in the pit of our stomach, we know what it is. When we don't want to accept it, when we just kind of skim over that, it's because we don't want to have to make a decision because decisions are hard to make. And usually the decision is, what do I do? Do I confront this person? Do I have a hard conversation where I know they're going to get defensive and we're probably going to get into a fight? Potentially, I could lose this person. I could end this relationship. I could end this friendship of 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. My mom's going to get mad. My dad's going to get mad. I know how they react. I'm not going to talk to them for months. I'm not even going to stir up the waters. I'm not going to make waves. I'm just going to skim over it and I'm going to move on and I'll just deal with it as it comes. That's really hard because what's going to happen is when you skim over it and you don't accept it for what it is, you are creating toxicity within yourself. You are only hurting yourself. You are wearing yourself down. You are stressing yourself out. You're causing anxiety because every time you go into holidays or over for dinner, or you're meeting that friend for brunch or happy hour or a meetup, or when you wake up to that person or when you come home to that person, it creates anxiety because you know what it is you're feeling inside, and now you're fighting that. So think about it. They have no idea what you're going through, but everything is going through you. So you are wreaking havoc on your own self. And sometimes we have to do that because a lot of times that's the process of figuring things out. A lot of times we don't want to spit out and say exactly what it is that we want to say, but it takes a while to accept it. But once you do accept it, you're able to have a choice of, do you talk to this person and you cross your fingers and you pray and you hope that the conversation goes well and maybe you bring something to their attention? Or are you strong enough to lose this relationship? Do you love yourself enough to let go of something that you've had or held on for so long? Do you love yourself enough to be uncomfortable, to hurt a little bit, knowing that it's all in the best for you and your life? This is such a deep, hard conversation to have because I know what it's like. I was in a relationship for 7 years, and probably 4 of those years, probably 5 of those years, I knew what it was. So I sat in a situation that beat me down verbally, mentally, emotionally, and eventually physically every day. And I lost who I was and I crushed my soul and I withered away physically, like I was 100 pounds. I sat there and I let it beat me down for 5 more years because I didn't want to accept how toxic it was, because I didn't want to make a choice, because I wasn't strong enough. I felt I wasn't confident enough. I felt I wasn't secure enough to be able to stand strong. I knew what my values and my morals were, but I didn't have the strength to stick up for myself anymore. So I stayed in something, hoping it was something else for 5 years. I did that. And then when I finally accepted it for what it was, I made the choice And my life turned around like that instantly. It wasn't all roses and rainbows. It took work, but it was amazing work. It was powerful work. It was work that was uncomfortable, but it felt good. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So that is a way that you can recognize, I'm sorry, not a way, but those intuitions, the tuning into your feelings is how you recognize what is good for you and what is not good for you. And that's a biological response. That is a response that is built into our neurological system to protect us, right? But we have the choice to whether to ignore it and let it grow or to do something about it. So tuning into our feelings and recognizing, is this person or is this situation, do you feel like your energy is drained? Do you feel uplifted or do you feel discouraged after your interactions with this person? Because it's always going to be a certain pattern. There's people in my life where, my gosh, every time I freaking talk to them, it's like, oh my God, like I can't talk to you anymore because you're so freaking negative. And you drain the life out of me. They're energy vampires, right? And now I resent you for that. Now I resent you for that. And then you think, why the heck did I spend so much time talking to them? Why did I pick up the phone? Because when you see their name calling, what is your reaction? It's, oh God, what? Then you swallow, you suck it up, you pick up the phone, and then you're like, hey, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And inside you're dying because you're like, why? Why did I give in? Now I feel horrible. I'm uncomfortable talking to her. All I want is for the phone call to end. And afterwards, I feel even worse because maybe I gave in to the gossip. Maybe I didn't stand up for myself when she was kind of putting me down or kind of belittling what I was doing or always talking about herself or always making everything about her. And she's so selfish and this and that. And I gave her my time of day and I was having an amazing day. And now it sucks. Like, these are the things, you guys, that I'm talking about. These are the things, these are the ways you recognize who is toxic in your life. I'm not talking about you now, that was last episode. I'm talking about when you level up and you start to transform yourself and you start to create the confidence and create the resilience and create the awareness and have the emotional intelligence. When you start to transform all these things, you are going to be able to pick up on these signals like none other. And at first, it's going to be a little weird because you're not going to know what to do. What do I do? And you're going to get to a point where you will have no problem setting boundaries. And I will also say this. You have to give yourself permission. Fear and guilt and self-doubt, they are all a part of life and they're all pitfalls in our life, but they're there, right? We're human, we feel it. We might fear what the other person's response is going to be when we try to enforce boundaries, when we try to back off the relationship, when we try to talk to this person because we don't want to lose them and we want to know that we we don't just want to cut them out. No way. And honestly, most of the time you can't. It's really they either weed themselves out and you don't have to do anything, praise God, or it's like a very slow process of you setting boundaries and realizing, okay, that didn't work, setting more of a boundary, okay, that didn't work, setting more of a boundary, being more firm, being more direct. It's a learning curve. It's a learning process, but you are so confident in who you are that you know what you accept and what you don't accept. And it doesn't matter who they are to you. When their behavior or who they are is not acceptable, you are not afraid to take the steps you need to take in order to set those boundaries or in order to change that relationship. But you have to give yourself permission. You have to. We might feel guilty that by speaking up or saying no to a family member, is going to cause an issue. So a lot of us keep that deep down inside. We don't want to say anything. We don't want to rock the boat. My parents support me financially. If I say something, I'm going to be cut off. Okay, well then you need to get your own money. My parents support me in this way. Okay, well you need to take the control back. Right? Because they're just using these things as leverage against you so that you don't enforce boundaries so that you don't speak up. So we might wonder if we even have boundaries in the first place, or if we even deserve to have boundaries in the first place. So many believe that we should be able to cope with a situation and just say yes because we're a good daughter, we're a good son, we're a good spouse. But boundaries are not just a sign of a healthy relationship, it's a sign of self respect. So you have to give yourself permission for you and you alone, whether it's with your mother, whether it's with your father, whether if it's with your brother or your sister or your spouse or your partner or your friends or even a coworker, even a boss. You've got to give yourself permission to set these boundaries and to preserve them. You have to work hard to preserve them, or else they're just going to infiltrate your life. And I think for me, one of the hardest things that I can relate to is family. Um, there are situations where I'm like, oh my God, this person just freaking frustrates me so much. Why is he like that? Why is she like that? It bothers me so much. This, that, and the other. And I spent so much time being uncomfortable, being resentful, being angry and frustrated when I realized like I just have to set these boundaries, and it all comes back to me and my self-respect. If I'm going to be disrespected by a certain conversation, I'm not going to have that conversation with that somebody. You can coexist with someone. You can. I'm not going to have these conversations, these specific conversations with this specific person. It's not going to happen. That's my boundary. Am I going to go hang out with this person in a group or alone? No. My answer always will be thank you, but no, I'm busy. Thank you, but no, I'm busy. Thank you, but no, I'm busy. They'll get the point. And that's okay. That is a sign, that is you setting boundaries. And hopefully they respect them. And if they don't, and you have to get to a point where you're direct, you're going to be at a point, you're going to get to a point where you're exhausted and you're going to say, it's A, B, and C. Okay. I don't want to feel this way, but this is how it is. And this is how I have to manage it because I can't do this anymore. I can't feel this way anymore. So I'm protecting myself. I have too much self-respect. Right? So, a lot, right? So much, so much. But anyway, again, it all comes back to us and how we respond and how we react. We're not going to change the other person. We're just not. If they want to change on their own, that's great. But most of the time, we're not going to change them. So we have to change the way we handle situations. We have to change how much time we give that person, how much energy we give that person, what we choose to say or not to say, and how we respond to that person when they start to act like themselves. That is all setting boundaries, but you have to recognize the signals, the red flares. You have to learn how to accept them. It's okay. It doesn't mean you have to take the scissors and cut them right off. No, you can coexist in this world. So you have to recognize who drains your energy, where you feel uncomfortable, who are you resentful after the interactions. You just feel gross, yucky, you just don't feel good. And then also give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to set these boundaries. Give yourself permission to enforce these boundaries. We don't have to fear the other person's response because that's not our responsibility. That's not our job. Our job is to protect ourselves so that we can grow and strengthen who we are, our confidence, our resilience, and that we can make space for real amazing people to come into our life. Because if your life is filled with these toxic people and you keep them there, you are not going to grow. You are going to become stagnant. You are hindering your own self. You are the only person that is being affected by this. You're stunting your own growth. You're getting in your own way. Clear these people out. Minimize these relationships. Cut them off. Cut them back so that you can make room for empowering relationships, not just for yourself, but with other people. You can make room for meaningful people to come into your life who uplift you, who encourage you, who support you. Level up your tribe. I hope this touched somebody today. I know it was a lot. I know we got deep into it. I know these are hard conversations to have, but they need to be had. Have a wonderful, empowering week. I'll catch you next Monday.